I think that's what we're trying to do with the Deep Program podcast is I want to help explain what my old belief system was or is. Not just so I can understand it better, but for people who are coming into contact with it or may come into contact with it, or maybe they have kids at college who are coming home and talking to them about toxic masculinity. I want to kind of give them some information so they can counter it. But that's great that you that you helped her. You gave her a preview. Yeah, I didn't have that going in because I was kind of leaving behind my I was raised Southern Baptist and pretty conservative. And I went through a similar, I would say, pretty big transformation in thought from the age of like 16 to 19, where I left that belief system behind. And I decided I no longer believed in God. I called myself agnostic, but in retrospect, what I did was I replaced God, or I replaced a religion, having a belief. I replaced it with my political ideology. And
this proves my theory very well.
What's your theory?
Oh, my theory is that, the whole SJW intersectional stuff is just a form of a secular religion. And
totally.
By rooting out, I mean, the way you indoctrinate people in any ideology, a good first step is by removing religion. That's what all the authoritarian regimes have done in the past. They'll first, take God out of people's lives, and then it's far easier to replace it with another very strong belief system, which then operates, and serves a lot of the same functions that a traditional religion sort of would. And I've noticed in my own experience, both online and offline, with people who get really obsessed with this type of ideology, is that they do tend to be non-religious or even anti-religious in the traditional sense. I found that people who are, if someone is a strong Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or anything else, then they're far less susceptible to super hardcore intersectionality and social justice. Like, it seems like it's almost it's like the religion is in that place, so that hole is already filled. Whereas if it's not, I find that a lot of people become religious and fanatical about something else, just to replace that. So that's been one of my theories for a while of like, I think there's a connection there.
I completely agree with you. I think it creates a void for something, for meaning and purpose, and so people can find meaning and purpose in this belief system, or what they think is meaning and purpose, and it does provide a kind of its own kind of morality. And it gives you a list of, it's got doctrine, it's got a list of things you should believe and things you should do. But it doesn't have, I'm a very recent Christian. I've come back to God, and the old me would find that hilarious. Like, I go to Bible study now on Wednesday. The old me is like, what? Like, a lot of my SJW friends think I've lost it.
No, you found it. Right. You lost it 20 years ago. You found it.
I lost it 20 years ago. But I've come back to that, and I'm just learning about some things that I didn't, because when I was a kid, I didn't get very deep into my religious beliefs. And so what I'm realizing, it doesn't have a concept of grace. That's one thing it doesn't have. And it doesn't have a God. There's no creator. But there are other similarities, like the concept of original sin. It's like your privilege, but it differs because not everybody's born with the same amount of original sin, and some people don't have original sin. It's like some people don't have privilege and some people do. And so that's a little different. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah. I mean, down to the community organizing and the chants and the rituals.
Yeah.
And the very, very specific terminology that's quite impenetrable to somebody who's outside of it, and that people kind of signal to each other even on Twitter, like if someone's got their pronouns in their bio, that is like a signal to other SJWs, like, yeah, I'm on your side, right? It's not even like, it's weird. It's like you can see how they signal to each other online and offline. I feel like over the past few years, because I think probably because I've been on the receiving end of so many like rage mobs, like I've found certain patterns over the years of like all these people kind of like fit into. I'm almost like, gosh, like why is it? It becomes very predictable. Like it's weird, right? Like I'll see a certain tweet in my mentions that's like very aggressive, very hostile towards me, making all these weird assumptions and whatever. I'll hover over the person's thing, pronouns in bio 80% of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pronouns. Guess what? Do they also have because this is a thing now, is one form of they're continually breaking down identity into these groups, as you know, like the who's privileged and who's marginalized. And now mental illness has become a place where they break this down. And so I see a lot of the times now it'll say like pronouns, they and them, and then it'll be a string of like, you know, depression, anxiety, OCD, like all of their mental, because that's their identity. That's part of their identity.
Yeah.
It's
very weird. It's very weird.
Yeah.
And in the comparison to a normal religion thing, though, I'd say there's one of the things that it also lacks is there's no salvation.
True.
Right? Like there's no forgiveness, right? There's no. So in a typical religion, you know, it's like, okay, you know, everybody sins, but you know, you can sin, you can be forgiven. There's salvation. In this intersectional SJW world, it seems like, you know, you're just a heretic, you're an apostate. Like once you're gone, once you've sinned and you've been taken out, it's like, well, there's no coming back for you. There's no salvation. And even if you are privileged, you've got to continuously self-flagellate until you know, forever. It doesn't ever end. You've got to keep on. Yeah, you've got to. If you're white, you've got to keep apologizing for being white. You've got to recognize it every day, atone for it, do everything you can to, and that never ends. You know.
And if you're a male,
yeah. Man, if you're a male and white and straight, you know. So yeah, that's the Lucifer figure, right? So
that's absolutely, that's why I think in my experience, this is just anecdotal, but in my experience, the white straight male SJWs I've known have been the most
aggressive,
the most aggressive and the most kind of terrifying, because they have to really virtue signal that they're one of the good ones. Yeah, they have a lot of sins to make up for. So they the ones I've known anyway have just gone really over the top.
Yeah, those are the types who call me a white supremacist.
That's insane.
Which if it were not so hilariously ridiculous would be like deeply offensive, but I'm just like, bruh, like, like how, like
I did have a man call me a misogynist, so you know.
Of course. Internalized, right?
Internalized.
Yeah, I know the terminology. That's the funny thing. It's like I've interacted with so much of this stuff that I can kind of play the game. Which is what I did with my viral deadlift video, which was very funny.
Because so funny.
Nobody was really able to combat it because it's like, crap, he knows our own like arguments and terminology and stuff too. I do not scam. Put some respect on my name. Sick like a